You've probably fished a dime out of your pocket or heard one clink into a parking meter, barely giving it a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific Roosevelt dime from 1984 minted in Philadelphia could be worth far more than its face value because of tiny quirks, mint mistakes, and rare errors that slipped through production? What seems like ordinary pocket change might be a hidden treasure that collectors all over the world would love to find, and when you learn the full story behind the 1984 dime, the rich history of dimes in circulation, and the kinds of errors that make certain coins extremely collectible and potentially valuable, you'll never look at change the same way again. The 1984 dime carries with it a story that blends everyday use with coins that quietly traveled through cash registers, wallets, and banks before some of them became prized pieces in numismatic collections. Even though this coin was designed to be used in ordinary commerce, some of these pieces ended up different from the rest. And those differences, whether caused by minting mistakes, unusual die wear, misalignment, doubling, or other anomalies, are what can make a coin valuable far beyond its 10-cent face value. Coins are tiny pieces of history and art. In the case of the US dime, people over time have found value beyond the denomination stamped on them. Some coins gain value because of their silver content, some because they represent early historical issues, and some because they contain minting errors that are rare and interesting to collectors. The 1984 dime falls into the modern era, a time when minting technology had become far more automated and computerized than earlier in American history. But even then, errors occurred, and those errors help shape the fascinating stories collectors chase today. The US dime carries the image of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on its obverse. Roosevelt first appeared on the dime in 1946, just 1 year after his death, as a tribute to his leadership through some of the most challenging periods in modern American history. He led the country through part of the Great Depression and most of World War II. When the dime was redesigned in 1946 to honor him, the image replaced the winged Liberty head design that had been in use since 1916. Roosevelt's visage on the dime has become familiar to generations of Americans, and the coin itself has played an indispensable role in everyday commerce, from paying for public transportation to parking meters and everything in between. The reverse of the Roosevelt dime depicts a torch in the center, flanked by an olive branch on the user's left and an oak branch on the right. The torch symbolizes liberty, the olive branch peace, and the oak branch strength and independence. These design elements reflect the values that Roosevelt stood for and resonate with the broader symbolism of American ideals. The 1984 dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which for many years was one of the primary coin production facilities in the United States. The Philadelphia Mint is the oldest mint facility in the nation and has been responsible for producing billions of coins over its history. In 1984, the U.S. Mint was producing huge volumes of coins to meet the demands of daily commerce, and the Roosevelt dime was no exception. Millions upon millions of dimes were struck that year, and most of them entered circulation where they continued their primary purpose of facilitating everyday transactions. For the average person, a 1984 dime in circulated condition, that is, a dime that has been used in everyday commerce and shows evidence of wear, is worth exactly its face value of 10 cents. These circulated coins might show scratches, small dents, dull surfaces, and faded details. They may have passed through multiple hands over the years, and that wear generally limits their appeal to collectors unless they have unique features or errors. But in the world of coin collecting and numismatics, condition and rarity matter. Coins that have never been used in circulation and retain full original detail and luster are classified as uncirculated. These coins often come directly from rolls purchased from banks or from mint sets produced for collectors. Even uncirculated 1984 dimes without errors can command a modest premium over face value because collectors prefer coins that have sharp details, original surfaces, and strong eye appeal. Depending on condition, these uncirculated examples might be worth a few dollars to collectors who specialize in Roosevelt dimes or build complete date and mint mark sets. The real excitement comes when a coin doesn't look quite like every other dime from that year. That's when we begin to talk about errors, coins that were produced in ways that deviate from the mint's intended design and production standards. Error coins are fascinating because they represent the rare moments when something unplanned occurred during. You've seen a dime countless times and probably never given it a second thought until now. But what if I told you that one specific United States dime from 1998 minted in Philadelphia could be worth far more than its 10-cent face value, sometimes dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars, because of tiny errors and minting mistakes that slipped through quality control? What seems like everyday pocket change might actually be a hidden treasure, and once you understand what to look for, you'll never look at dimes the same way again. Now we are going to take a deep dive into the 1998 P Liberty One dime, its long history, how it circulated, why most are worth face value, and what rare errors and mint mark anomalies exist that make some of these coins truly valuable in the collector's market. The 1998 P dime is part of a long and storied tradition in United States coinage that stretches back more than 2 centuries. The denomination we know today as the dime has evolved both in design and in its role in everyday commerce, and through that entire time the coin has carried symbolism connected to liberty, national identity, and American values. Although the 1998 P dime is a relatively recent coin in historical terms, the series itself carries rich heritage and deep significance in the nation's currency system. The United States dime first appeared under the authority of the Coinage Act of 1796 as a small silver coin worth 1/10 of a dollar. At its inception, the dime carried the symbolic image of liberty on the obverse and various designs on the reverse, often representing ideals of freedom and prosperity. Over the years the composition and design changed as artistic tastes evolved and metal values shifted, but the core identity of the dime endured. In 1946 a major redesign of the dime took place. It was the first year the Roosevelt dime was struck, honoring President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had recently passed away. Roosevelt, who led the nation through the Great Depression and most of World War II, was closely associated with major social and economic transformation in the United States. Additionally, he was deeply connected to the March of Dimes, a charity originally founded to combat polio. For these reasons the United States Mint chose to memorialize him on the dime, replacing the winged Liberty head design that had been in use since 1916. Chief engraver John R. Sinek designed the new Roosevelt portrait, and since 1946 his likeness has appeared on every standard issue dime. The reverse of the Roosevelt dime carries a torch in the center symbolizing liberty, flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence. These design elements collectively embody principles that resonated deeply in the post-World War II era and still resonate today. The torch at the center stands as a reminder that liberty must be defended with vigilance, while peace and strength remain essential to the nation's stability. The 1998 P Liberty One dime simply refers to a Roosevelt dime struck in 1998 at the Philadelphia Mint. The P Mint mark when present usually appears on the obverse to the right of the torch, next to the date on modern dimes including those from 1998. Philadelphia has long been one of the primary facilities for producing United States coinage, and in 1998 it struck large quantities of dimes destined for everyday circulation. Millions of these coins entered commerce and were used for ordinary transactions, paying for goods and services, operating vending machines, and making change in stores, banks, and cash registers across the country. For most people these dimes simply served their purpose as 10-cent pieces. When found in circulation, worn and showing signs of age and handling, 1998 P Roosevelt dimes are generally worth their face value of 10 cents. Most circulated examples display surface wear from use over many years, slight abrasions, loss of original luster, and other indications of daily commerce. There's nothing inherently rare about these everyday examples because the 1998 P dime was struck in large quantities, and unless a dime is in exceptional condition or has an unusual feature, it remains a common circulation coin. Collectors, however, view coins through a different lens. They pay close attention to condition, rarity, historical significance, and unique characteristics that distinguish one coin from another. Coins that have never circulated, often referred to as uncirculated or mint state coins, are typically worth more than their face value because they retain crisp details, original surfaces, and strong eye appeal. Coins that exhibit errors or unusual production varieties can be even more valuable, sometimes dramatically so, because these deviations are rare and often highly sought after in the collector's market. Before we explore the specific error varieties and anomalies that make certain 1998 P dimes valuable, it is helpful to You may think a dime is just a dime, something you spend without a second thought, something that jingles in your pocket and gets lost in the everyday shuffle of change, but what if I told you that one particular 2000D dime could be worth far more than its 10-cent face value? What if I told you that a coin you might find in your pocket change right now could actually be worth dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars to the right collector because of tiny minting errors, production anomalies, mint mark irregularities, and mistakes that slipped through the United States Mint's quality control back at the turn of the millennium? This very ordinary coin has a story that reaches deep into American numismatic history and into the meticulous science of coin minting, and when you understand the history, the circulation value, the types of errors that exist, and the real marketplace worth of these varieties, you'll never look at change the same way again. Every coin has a journey from metal planchet to pocket change, but only some coins have journeys that make them special. The 2000D dime is one of those coins that at first glance looks like ordinary pocket change. It was struck for general circulation, one of millions produced, and it shared a world of commerce with every American who used coins in the early years of the 21st century. In everyday commerce, the 2000D dime did what dimes do. It paid for parking meters, vending machines, laundry machines, phone calls back when pay phones still mattered. It made exact change at the grocery store, fuel pumps, and every retail counter where coinage was accepted. In its everyday circulated form, a 2000D dime is worth exactly what it says on its face, 10 cents. But that is only the beginning of the story. To understand how a 2000D dime can be worth far more than face value, you need to step back and understand the history of the dime in United States coinage, how coins are made, why errors occur, what kinds of errors make a coin valuable to collectors, and how the collector's market determines current values. This story blends history, economics, mint technology, rarity, and collector psychology to show how even a coin from the modern era can become extraordinarily collectible. The United States dime has existed since the earliest days of the mint. The Coinage Act of 1792 established the U.S. Mint and created a decimal currency system in which the dime, meaning 1/10 of a dollar, played a fundamental role. From the very beginning, American dimes were intended to be small, everyday coins that facilitated everyday commerce. The earliest dimes were made of silver and carried symbolic designs representing liberty and the young nation's ideals. They were small coins, but they moved through all corners of the expanding country. Over the 19th and early 20th centuries, the imagery, composition, and symbolism evolved in keeping with artistic tastes and the nation's growth. In 1916, a new dime design emerged known today as the winged Liberty head. The public often refers to these as Mercury dimes because the figure of Liberty wears a cap with wings that evoke Mercury, the Roman messenger god, but the official intent was to represent Liberty herself, not Mercury. These dimes were beautiful and widely used until 1945. Following the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1945, the United States Mint made a major design change. Roosevelt was a towering figure in American history, serving as president during the Great Depression and most of World War II. He was also closely associated with the March of Dimes, a major public health campaign originally aimed at combating polio. In recognition of this connection and his leadership, the Mint chose to honor Roosevelt on the dime beginning in 1946. The new design featured Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse. The torch symbolizes liberty, the olive branch peace, and the oak strength and independence. That Roosevelt design continued uninterrupted through the year 2000 and into the present, making the dime one of the most consistent coin designs in United States history. In 2000, dimes were still struck in large quantities for circulation, and the 2000D designation simply means that the dime was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the primary United States Mint facilities, along with Philadelphia and on certain products San Francisco. Philadelphia historically was the first mint facility and did not always place a mint mark on its coins. By the year 2000, Philadelphia dimes bear a P mint mark while Denver dimes carry a D mint mark. In everyday use, most people never pay attention to mint marks or the subtle differences between coins of the same year and denomination. A 2000D dime was mixed into rolls and bank bags with millions of other dimes and entered commerce, where it performed its job as a 10-cent coin. Ordinary circulated 2000D dimes are. You might think a dime is just a dime, something you barely notice when it chinks into a vending machine or drops into a coin jar, but what if I told you that one specific 2000p Liberty 1 dime could be worth far more than its face value? What if I told you that a coin you might find in your pocket right now could be worth dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars because of little minting errors, subtle anomalies, and rare production mistakes that slipped through the United States Mint's quality control at the turn of the millennium? This is not speculation. Collectors all over the world actively seek out these unusual coins, and once you understand the history, the minting process, the errors, and how the market values them, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. The 2000p dime is one of those coins that most people take for granted. Thousands were struck, most circulated widely, and today most people only think about it as 10 cents. But beneath that ordinary exterior lies a fascinating story that spans the history of United States coinage, the technical artistry of minting, the quirks that occur during production, and the collector market that assigns value to these quirks. To appreciate how this small coin can be worth so much more than 10 cents, you need to understand its journey from the mint to your pocket, to the collectors who study every tiny detail. The United States dime has existed almost as long as the nation itself. When the U.S. Mint was established under the Coinage Act of 1792, the dime was one of the new denominations created to function within a decimal currency system. The very name dime comes from the Latin word decima, meaning tenth, which embodied the idea that the new American currency would be divided into tenths and hundredths. From that very beginning, the dime was intended to be a small but essential part of everyday commerce, used for fractional payments and transactions of modest value. For many decades, the dime of the early United States was struck in silver, a metal that had intrinsic worth and was traditionally used for small denominations. These early dimes featured allegorical representations of liberty, wreaths, and other symbolic imagery. Over time, the artistic designs of the dime evolved with changes in taste and technology. Each new design captured a particular moment in American history, while the dime itself remained a constant in daily life. In 1916, the winged Liberty head design was introduced. These are often called Mercury dimes by collectors because the figure of Liberty on the obverse wears a winged cap that resembles the Roman god Mercury more than traditional classical representations of liberty. The Mercury dimes of that era are among the most beloved and recognized designs in all of American coinage, but by the mid-20th century the United States had entered a new historical phase that called for new symbolism. In 1946, following the death of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the U.S. Mint introduced a new design for the dime to honor his leadership. Roosevelt had guided the nation through the Great Depression and most of World War II, and he was closely associated with the March of Dimes, an organization founded to combat polio. Because of this connection, the Mint chose to memorialize him on the 10-cent coin. Chief engraver John R. Sinek's design placed Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse with the familiar motto "In God We Trust," the word liberty, and the date. The reverse design features a torch in the center symbolizing liberty, flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence. This imagery resonated deeply with the American public in the post-war era and has endured into the modern era. By the year 2000, when the coin in question was struck, the Roosevelt design had been in continuous use for more than half a century. In that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced vast numbers of Roosevelt dimes for general circulation, while the Denver Mint and San Francisco Mint produced additional coins for circulation and collector products. The designation P on a 2000p dime indicates it was struck at the Philadelphia facility. For most people, these coins looked, felt, and functioned just like every other dime ever used in commerce. In everyday circulation, a 2000p dime is worth 10 cents. Most of them are worn from decades of use, their surfaces dulled by countless exchanges from hand to hand. The high points of Roosevelt's portrait are worn down, the shine of the original strike has long faded, and small scratches, nicks, and discolorations mark the surfaces from everyday handling. These circulated coins are plentiful, and their value in commerce remains at face value because they are common and show no collector's quality. Even collectors who specialize in Roosevelt dimes often view these worn, circulated examples as baseline pieces that complete a date and mint mark set. But you probably drop dimes into vending machines, piggy banks, convenience store counters, and toll booths every day without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific 2002p Liberty 1 dime, a coin you might find in your pocket change, could actually be worth far more than its 10-cent face value because of tiny errors, minting mistakes, and unusual variations that slipped through quality control nearly a quarter-century ago? What looks like everyday pocket change could be a hidden gem worth tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars in the right collector's hands, and once you understand the history, rarity, market demand, and the types of errors that make certain 2002p dimes valuable, you'll never look at your change the same way again. This isn't a tall tale. Coin collectors, dealers, and numismatists around the world track unusual coins from dates as seemingly ordinary as 2002 because modern coins can and do contain fascinating anomalies. Some of these anomalies occurred at the United States Mint during production and went unnoticed for years, only to be discovered by astute collectors. The result is that what started as a dime intended for everyday spending became something far more interesting and valuable. The 2002 P dime is part of one of the most enduring and beloved coin series in United States history. To understand why errors and certain varieties make one of these dimes valuable, you need to know both the deep history behind the dime as a denomination and how coins are actually produced. The origins of the U.S. dime stretch back to the earliest days of the American Republic, and the word dime itself comes from the French word dime meaning tenth, because the dime has always been worth 1/10 of a dollar. When the Coinage Act of 1792 established the United States Mint, it created a decimal currency system that included the dime along with other denominations like the dollar, half-dollar, quarter, and cent. The dime was made of silver because at that time precious metals were standard for most coinage and gave intrinsic value to the money people used. These early silver dimes featured various images of liberty and symbolic designs representing the nation's ideals of freedom, prosperity, and unity. In the decades that followed, the designs evolved, each reflecting the artistic tastes and cultural values of the times, but the dime's essential role in everyday commerce remained constant. Much of American coinage history revolves around its designs, and the dime is no exception. In 1916 a new design emerged known today as the winged Liberty head dime. Many collectors refer to these as Mercury dimes because the figure of Liberty on the obverse wears a winged cap that resembles the Roman god Mercury. That design was striking and elegant, and it remained in circulation through the early decades of the 20th century. But by the mid-20th century, the nation had undergone dramatic social, economic, and political changes, and the time came for a new design that would reflect a new generation. In 1946, after the end of World War II and shortly following President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's death, the United States Mint introduced a new dime design to honor him. Roosevelt had guided the nation through the Great Depression and most of World War II and was a towering figure in 20th-century American history. He was also closely connected with the March of Dimes, a charity originally formed to combat polio, and that association made the dime a fitting place to commemorate his legacy. The new design featured Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse along with the traditional motto "In God We Trust," the word liberty, and the date. The reverse design depicted a torch symbolizing liberty, flanked by an olive branch symbolizing peace and an oak branch representing strength and independence. This combination of imagery captured powerful national values in a coin used every day by millions. This Roosevelt design has endured for decades, and by the year 2002 the dime had become one of the most familiar pieces of money in the United States. Millions of Roosevelt dimes were produced and released into circulation each year. The P Mint mark on a 2002 P dime signifies that it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which along with the Denver Mint and occasionally the San Francisco Mint has been a primary producer of U.S. coinage. In 2002, Philadelphia struck vast numbers of dimes for everyday use, and most of these coins seamlessly entered circulation for transactions large and small, from grocery store purchases to arcade games and laundry machines. For most people, a 2002 P dime is simply a 10-cent coin used for everyday commerce. Ordinary circulated examples show signs of wear and tear from years of handling, scratches, nicks, softened design elements, dull or muddy fields, and loss of original mint luster. These coins are plentiful, and in typical circulated condition their value remains at F.